Hi guys, Aceface back with another video for you, and I'm back today with a full rundown and review of WarZone Mann 2018. Right guys, so today I'm going to run through how I did at the WarZone Mann Tournament, which was run just a couple of weeks ago over at, funny enough, the Isle of Man. I'm going to go through all the details of kind of how I got on, what my list was, what was kind of at the tournament, and kind of just a bit of information about kind of what went on, and hopefully it'll be interesting for you. Before I get started, if you haven't already, please do hit the sub button. It helps me tons. I'm going to kind of point you in the direction of a few other things as well. If you're interested in battle reports and you like full dice by dice, do check out our other channel, which is Twisted Dice. There is a full battle report every single week and lots of cool armies. We pretty much cover every army in the game, beautifully painted armies, and some real kind of fun that goes on there. Beautiful tables, you know, you name it, we've got it over there. So make sure you check out Twisted Dice. I will put a link in the description below so you can jump over and give the channel some love. If you want to follow me further, you can follow me on Instagram. That's where I post all my up-to-date pictures. You know, you've got a work in progress, what's going on the hobby desk, and you get an idea of what's going on there. And if you'd like to follow me further and support the channel further and everything that I do, then you can support me on Patreon. Got loads of perks there. You can get yourself some exclusive dice, some exclusive t-shirts. You can become a member of the Discord server. At the moment there's only a few people in there, but my ambition is to get that a real active part of the community and get an opportunity to kind of interact with you guys. And I can't thank the guys over on Patreon enough. You guys really help me doing what I'm doing. I'm really looking forward to doing, not only to interacting with the guys on Patreon even more, but my plan is to do some regular giveaways over on Patreon. I'm just waiting for some more kind of supporters over there, and then we can get some kind of regular giveaways and stuff kind of going on, and really kind of have a lot of fun over on there. That's kind of the plan, is really kind of involve the guys that are supporting me doing what I'm doing, and kind of you know, do some stuff back for those guys. So that's the kind of plan anyway. But anyway, I digress, and I want to jump in and talk about WarZone Mann and kind of how it went on. So to kind of give you a little bit of information on the tournament as a whole, it's been running now 3 years. This is the third year, but previously it was very much a kind of almost like a league format. So the tournament happened over a period of time, and it was mainly for the locals, so for the people that lived over on the Isle of Man, and particularly the people that went to their kind of club that was organised. It's organised through a guy called Simon, or I prefer to affectionately call him One Sesh, because he can never normally stand more than one session on a weekend. And Simon has kind of been really active in the community. He goes to a lot of tournaments over here in the UK, and has also been to the Las Vegas Open, so he knows what a good tournament is, and he's very much trying to really kind of push the boat out and try and make WarZone Mann a real kind of stamp on the calendar, and I think it really will be going forward. It's a real incredible event already, and it's only just kind of beginning. So yeah, so two-day event, 5 rounds, currently playing full ITC, which is great. Love the ITC missions, and it's already a GT. Simon's ambition is to really kind of continue to grow the event, and he's already planned for next year it to be up to 50 players, which is incredible, seeing that we're already hitting the kind of 30 player mark basically the first year it was launched to externally and over a weekend. So that's a real achievement for pretty much the first run out, and really well deserved. So there's already going to be a kind of page set up, so once you've finished this video you can jump over on Facebook and search WarZone Mann, you can ask to be in the group and get an opportunity to see kind of what's going on. Simon is going to put up lots of work in progress of tables and terrain, and going forward let you know kind of what's going on in the event. So it'll be something that really kind of rolls throughout the year, and you get an idea of what's kind of going on. So lots of exciting things for the event as a whole. It's set, as I said, in the beautiful Isle of Man, and you know, you can get a ferry across from Liverpool, or otherwise you can fly over from a lot of the main airports in the UK, and I'm sure it's not too difficult for people externally in Europe and wherever, if you want to kind of visit the island. It's a lovely place, very historical in the fact that it's the, you know, it's the place for the Isle of Man TT, so a really famous motorbike race. I don't really know much about motorbikes, as you can probably tell by the way I kind of say that, but very, very famous. It attracts people from all over the UK and all over the world. It's really, really renowned, and a lot of history about that race. So the island itself is pretty much like a permanent racetrack, which is quite crazy, but it's really, really kind of pretty. It's not too busy because there's not that many people that live over on the island, so you get kind of a real kind of nice, friendly, quiet atmosphere there. So it's a very chilled out and very much a place where you can go away for your holidays. Now hopefully I'll put some pictures up and you've just seen a few pictures. Didn't get a chance to take many pictures of the island, but it is very, very pretty. You know, lots of fresh air, you know, the beach, there's all sorts, and definitely a place I'd recommend visiting anyway, but a great opportunity to play some cool 40k while you're there. So the event was held, you know, at kind of a nice little hall, nice lots of space, so plenty of room to kind of move around. Hopefully you'll see that from the pictures, and there was kitchen facilities, so you could grab yourself a drink, cups of tea. You could also put your food in the fridge that was provided there, so if you want to kind of, you know, keep something cool, you could do that. Plenty of room to kind of move around and feel quite comfortable. There was a local pub that was just down the road, sort of less than 5-minute walking distance, so you could grab a beer in your breaks, and also like fish and chips and whatever is just around the corner as well. So loads of places to kind of eat and, you know, and drink and be merry, so that's obviously a big tick in that box as well. When I got to the event, so when I got there on the Friday, you know, met up with quite a few of the people, really friendly crowd, very, very welcoming, no kind of atmosphere at all, you know, negative atmosphere, just a real kind of fun, light-hearted, chilled out group of people that very much, you know, up for the hobby, and wanted to have a good time, which is really, really cool. So straight away you feel very, very at home, you know, around the event, which is again another big tick in the box. So ultimately, yeah, really, really great general feel about the event. Talking about the tables and the actual, you know, the setup, again, really, really good. Some of the best tables I've seen. There was, you know, there was some real kind of, you know, showcase tables that I would say are real up there with some of the best tables I've ever played on. And then the general standard of table as a whole was really consistent. So you had lots of line of sight blocking, which is absolutely crucial for 8th edition. You know, loads of ruins, loads of features, and every table had a slight different feel to it, so you really kind of had a theme there, and that was really fun to play on. So there were no bad tables, every table was good. You knew that whatever table you were going to rock up to, you were going to get a good game from a table point of view. The organisation was really good, so no hesitations, no wasting any time. You got to the event, all the tables were laid out, everything was easily accessible and well organised exactly where you needed to be. The draw happened the night before, so everybody knew who they were playing and were able to kind of do a little bit of their homework, which was a lot of fun, built a bit of banter, which again is kind of a nice part about the tournament. So yeah, the setup was awesome as well, and hopefully you'll see some pictures. So let's talk about my tournament and kind of how that went on, and I'll use my handy BCP app to remind myself of exactly both my list and the players I played against. So as I said, a full ITC GT registered event, which is always cool, and I brought to this tournament, I brought my Thousand Suns with a very much with a twist, because mainly because my Thousand Suns are quite a long way from being ready, was one of the first things I wanted to take him. I wanted to take Magnus. I wanted to take some cool demon princes that I've been working on, but the reality was I wasn't going to get my full Thousand Suns army finished, and you know, what was I going to do? So I decided to take all the Thousand Suns stuff that I'd pretty much done, well, majority of it, and then team it up with some Nergal, a marriage made in heaven on the table, marriage made in hell in the fluff, but it was a pretty powerful list. So my list consisted of a Supreme Command detachment in the Thousand Suns, which was Ahriman, a Demon Prince with wings and malefic talons. I also took him with walk bolters because you can take that as per the flow graph. So even though it was 1,000 suns, you can still take that type of Demon Prince because it's in the index. Using that kind of loophole a little bit, and hopefully in time that will go, but we digress. But you make the most in a tournament of what you've got. And then I had another Demon Prince exactly the same, but this one I gave him the relic, which is the Helm of the Third Eye, which means that every time your opponent uses a stratagem, you roll 1 dice, not for how many CPs, but 1 dice, and on a 5+ you get a CP, which is nice kind of farming relic, always one to take generally. I then had an exalted sorcerer on disc, and I gave him the Warp Flame pistol, just had a few spare points. I then had in elites I had a Zangor Shaman, just a real cheap access to smite, and because he's on a disc he's nice and quick and easy to get about. And then had in the Lord of War slot I had Magnus the Red, definitely an awesome unit, really fun to play with and can be incredible. Can also be a real bind for the list because he can go down incredibly quickly, and that's an awful lot of points held up in one model. I then had a battalion detachment of Nergal Demons, which consisted of the Poxbringer. Now I gave him as a psychic power the Miasma of Pestilence, which basically is a -1 to hit. I then had Sloppity Bilepiper. I love that name, never gets tired of using it. And I had the Spox, I can't even say it, the Scrivener, another really cool unit. And then in Troops Choice I had 2 units of Nergalins, and in this particular tournament I didn't find the Nergalins particularly useful, which is real interesting. First time really using Nergal since the FAQ, and whatever people say about you still needing kind of bubble wrap and a way to, you know, to hold people back, those Nergalins were not useful. But anyway, 2 units of Nergalins and then 2 units of Plague Bearers, full 30 men strong with all the whistles and bells. And that gave me my list. That was my full list for the tournament. Now, just going to give you an idea of how I wanted to play it. I very much wanted to play the big blocks of Plague Bearers to protect all my smiting characters, and then I wanted to use Magnus very much as a distraction piece to try and cause as much damage as he could, to really buff the sorcerers, but ultimately to buy me time to congest the board with the big units of Plague Bearers. So that was very much my tactics for the tournament, and on the whole it paid off pretty well. So my very first game was, if I can find the gentleman's name to give him his full credit, was Christian. Now Christian was also playing Thousand Suns, and It was his first proper tournament. He had a really good list. It was a proper Thousand Suns list rather than my poor effort of Thousand Suns. He was bringing the full thing, so credit to him there. It was a really nice, fluffy, fun list, which actually had quite a lot of bite to it, and he was a good player. Now, he knew how to play his army very well, and I think he ended up pretty well for his first tournament, definitely in the top half, if not in the top third. So his list was, he had Ahriman, he had a Demon Prince, he had a Sorcerer and Terminator armour, he had 2 units of 10 men rubrics with all the Soul Reaper goodness. He then had a big unit of, I say a big unit, he had a 20-man unit of Zangor, rather than 30 men. He had 5-man unit of Scarab Occult Terminators. He then had a Helldrake, and he had Magnus. So definitely, you know, there's a few weak links in that list, a few things generally as an optimised you probably wouldn't take. Unfortunately, the rubrics being one of them, but the Helldrake definitely being one, and the Terminators again, and you'd probably want a unit of 30 Zangors. But not taking that away from the guy, he absolutely knew his army really well. He knew his psychic powers. He knew how to play the list. But unfortunately, it was all going to come down to Magnus versus Magnus, and whoever got the kind of the jump on the other person would have made the difference to find out kind of what happened. As it was, I managed to get the jump on him. I purposely avoided Magnus and put my Magnus the other side of the board, and then I worked my way around the board to then hit his back lines, start to crunch through units, and then at the most, you know, optimum time, I then charged Magnus with Plague Bearers, knowing that he wouldn't be able to kill them all in one round of combat, even though he was going to munch through quite a few of them. So that would then give me the opportunity, so he couldn't charge Magnus with Magnus, which then would give me the opportunity to do it the next turn, which is exactly what happened. So he disengaged, he tried to do some powers, tried to do some damage on me, which, you know, he did a little bit of work. I then Death Hexed Magnus. Obviously it's going to be a tough one because he's getting the pluses to his deny, I'm getting my pluses to my cast, so it's always going to be a bit of a dice off. I managed to get the Death Hex through. I charged Magnus and then killed him in one round of combat with my Magnus, funny enough. And that ultimately turned the game. That was always going to be probably what would happen, and it was. That's what happened. I managed to take him out, which pretty much gave me the victory. I got a good score off my first game, scored majority of the points that I needed to, and went through to game 2. So, game 2, I played a good friend of mine. I played Mr. Alex Heap, one of the members of my club, the Squid Badgers, to give them a good call out. And he was the reigning champion, so he had won, even though, as I said, they're not quite the same because they were run over a period of time and they were generally locals. But he won the last 2 WarZone Manns, so he was the reigning champion. And Alex is also a good player. I've played him a few times in the past. He's beat me every time so far, so I think this is the 3rd time that we played. His list was a very solid list. It was a real, you know, a real mixture, a real kind of mix match of good solid Imperial units. And his army was a Supreme Command detachment of Shield Captain Custodes. Just a solid unit, you know, really can't go wrong. So we had 3 of those. He then had a battalion detachment of Space Marines, so he had a Tech Marine, and then he had a jump pack, a Smash Captain basically. He was a Raven Guard Smash Captain, so quite a good, if you can't take the Blood Angel one, the Raven Guard one's probably the next best bet. He had lots of tricks, real difficult to bring down with his Relic Shield, so he was hard to deal with. He then had 3 units of Scouts. He had some Servitors. He had Aggressors. He had 2 Scorpiuses, which are the Whirlwinds, but do a lot of damage. He then had a couple of Quad Launchers, and then he had Guilliman. So a real mixed match of different chapters, which you can do because they're all Astartes, so it's fine. It still doesn't class as soup. It still gives them the opportunity to use stratagems and the benefits from Guilliman in the super heavy auxiliary. So yeah, in this game I got very lucky. I got first turn, so he couldn't do that real big hit on Magnus. I purposely, with my Nergalins, I didn't want him to get first blood, so I didn't want him to get his, because he went for old school, I went for old school, so killing a unit in the first turn was pretty important for both of us, and I didn't want him to give him that option. So just in case he got first turn, I deployed my Nergalins right at the back of the board, so he were out of range of his long range artillery pieces. There was a massive piece of terrain in the middle. He deployed really smartly to try and stop me from smiting him. I managed to kind of get the jump on him, found some angles, done some really devastating casting on his Custo bikers. I managed to see off one, do a little bit of damage to another one, and then made quite a few charges with my Nergal plague bearers into some of his scouts, did some damage there, took out a second unit. And in return, Alex just really struggled to do damage to Magnus. So Magnus survived that kind of first turn, which was real big. He needed to dispatch him and he just could not kill him off. He then struggled with killing the Demon Princes, which caused an awful lot of damage. And then ultimately that's what it came down to. He was just struggling to do damage. Eventually he saw off Magnus. But then the Plague Bearers started to become the closest target, which frustrated his artillery pieces, even with Guilliman. And then I kind of mulched through everything in the centre of the board, took the objectives with my Plague Bearers, and all he could really do was just continually try to chew away at my core forces, and ultimately he couldn't do enough damage. So I took that. It was quite a close game as far as points wise. It wasn't a big score for me, but it was enough to give me the victory. So that was 2 wins. Now the WarZone Man, just because of other people using the hall, the tournament was 2 games on the Saturday and 3 games on the Sunday, which is an interesting way of doing it, but it worked really nicely because it meant on the Saturday you had a nice lane in the morning, and it was quite chilled out, 2 games of 40k, which is quite cool, and put the pressure more on the Sunday. But the reality is, the locals were obviously quite close to home because it's a relatively small island, and people coming over generally come for the weekend, so it didn't matter playing 3 games on the Sunday, which was kind of a nice thing, a bit different from kind of normal but still nice. So we had a really good night out on Saturday night, good nightlife in the Isle of Man, actually pretty cool, lots of bars, lots of cool places to kind of eat and have a laugh. So real enjoyment evening out. I tried to take it easier than I have recently, but I still felt rough in the morning, felt very rough, but there you go, that's kind of me. And England won on the Saturday as well, so everyone was in good spirits, and it was generally a good evening out. We went into the Sunday, and I was playing a guy called Kevin, who had done extremely well in day 1. He had taken out what I would have considered probably one of the favourites for the tournament, which was a really strong Nergal army. And yeah, I didn't expect him to do that. He was playing a guy called Rob Mitchell, who I really thought was probably one of my picks for the tournament, and Kevin managed to beat him. I'm not sure who he played for a second game, but he won that as well. So I was going to come up against a mixture of Harlequins, Alatok, all that goodness, and Kevin, as a decent player, was quite capable of potentially taking the win from me. Unfortunately, Kevin had a complicated evening, let's say, without going into details, on Saturday night, and didn't get home until 8 o'clock in the morning, which happened to be the start game of game 3. So I got a buy. Now, I didn't want to buy. Now, I made that really very clear. I'd spent my hard-earned cash to come over and play 5 games of 40k, and for me that's the most important thing. So I was very disappointed not to play my first game on day 2, and someone else almost didn't turn up, but then they did rock in late, so I didn't even get an opportunity to play kind of a fun test game, which was a real disappointment. I was also meant to be playing on what I would say the best table, which I didn't get a chance to play on in the end, which again really disappointing. But it is what it is, and it's just one of those things. What it did give me the opportunity to do was wander around the tables, chat to other people, see how other games are going, which was quite good fun, and gave me a kind of rest, I suppose, as well, after a relatively heavy evening. But yeah, so disappointing there. So obviously I've got to buy. The way that the ITC scoring works as well, not only did I get a buy, but I also didn't manage to get full points, which again is disappointing, because if I had scored, 30 points rather than 20 points, that would have made a big difference to potentially my end score. So disappointing to get a buy, never what you want in my mind. Some people really competitive might say it's great, but I really didn't want it. So that put me going into game 4, on a collision course with Mr. Martin McNeil, good friend and sponsor of the channel at Dice and Decks. Check them out if you haven't already. And Martin, another one of my tips for the title, he was bringing his Dark Elder and a very strong list that was crafted by Martin, along with helps with some of the best Dark Eldar players in the community. So Martin reached out and got some advice on list building, along with what he had and what he wanted to bring, and his list was incredibly powerful. So he had, and I'll tell you what he had, because it will be of interest to you guys, because it was a really strong list. So he had a battalion detachment with 2 Archons. Of course, this is the nasty Vect Blackheart detachment. He had 3 units of Cabalite Warriors and a Cerberite. He then also a Cerberite in each unit. Don't really know Dark Elder. Pointy here, guys. He then had, in heavy support, he had the Triple Ravager, Disintegrator Cannon, standard build, very powerful. He then had a flyer, so he had the Razor Wing Jet Fighter, which is a really solid unit. That had the Disintegrator Cannons as well. He then had dedicated transport of a Raider with a Lance, 2 Venoms, standard kind of loadout. He then had a Craft World detachment with a Farseer and a Warlock on jet bike, and a unit of Rangers for some kind of sniping goodness. He then had a detachment of the Prophets of Flesh, which is kind of homunculus-y type, whatever they're called, part of Dark Elder, and he had a homunculus, and then he had a heavy support of 3 units of 2 Talos with Haywire Blasters, and all the other goodness, Chain Flails and Micro Scalpels. Yeah, Micro Scalpels. And really strong list. This list is very capable of winning tournaments, and had just ripped through a incredibly solid night list. Dean took a very powerful, very typical IG farming, big Castellan, other knight support, just a really solid, powerful night list. Martin got a little bit fortunate the fact that Dean didn't get first turn, and then Dean, still quite new to the list, made a few mistakes. I watched quite a lot of the game, but still, Martin's list was very powerful, and he managed to chew through Dean to take that victory. So that was my next game, and on paper I wasn't sure whether I could beat him. I knew how quickly and easily Martin had the capability of dispatching Magnus, particularly if he got first turn. Magnus wasn't going to get an opportunity to feature in this game. And I knew he had enough small arms fire to potentially chew through those plague bearers pretty quickly, and the speed and movability to be able to swing round and target characters if I wasn't very, very careful. And of course, that dreaded Vex stratagem to stop me doing the things I really wanted to do. So I knew this was going to be a very, very tough game, and I knew I needed to get a bit of luck, and I had to play out my skin. And did I play out my skin? Well, I don't think I made any mistakes. I think I played it pretty much perfect to game plan that I wanted to play. I was very fortunate. I got first turn, and I managed to... He deployed very aggressively, which I expected him to. I kind of threw caution to the wind and played in my normal style, which is also pretty aggressive. So I made sure that if I was going to get first turn, that Magnus was going to have the opportunity to really do as much damage as he could. I needed to get through those Talos to stop them getting to my lines and causing trouble. They were my big priority. Get rid of them. Get rid of the Ravagers, and I knew if I could get rid of those two parts of the army, it'd be alright. I wasn't as concerned with his Eldar trickery, because I was convinced that I would win the Battle of the Psychers. So I was hoping that I wasn't going to get doomed or jinxed, but I had to try and get through some of his hard-hitting stuff quickly. So I got first turn, I rushed in, I dispatched one of the units of Talos pretty quickly with a combination of smites and a combination of death hexing, and then cut them apart with Magnus. I got all my powers off, so I really didn't fail anything, which is key. And then what happened was Martin hit back, and unfortunately I have played Martin quite a few times, and whenever I play him, his luck kind of disappears. In fact, very similar to the same way that whenever I play Lawrence over on Tabletop Tactics, my luck disappears. It's very much the same with me and Martin. Whenever I play Martin, he cannot roll at all. He fails everything, and my luck just literally rolls through. And that was pretty much the story, because it took him 3 turns to take out Magnus. And that's just, you can't, if Magnus lasts 3 turns, you've not won the game. It's as simple as that. And that was what it happened, really. So I used the Plague Bearers really clever, so I got them to the middle of the board. I congested the objectives. I engaged his Talos with kind of, but then minusing 2 to hit them, so he couldn't do anything. He was too scared to take his Talos out because he knew that he wouldn't be able to assault again, and his Haywire Blasters against, I had no mech, were going to be pretty useless. He didn't want to waste a turn, so he just continued to try and scythe through my Plague Bearers and just really struggled. I kept rolling 1s for my morale. Because I've got the Scrivener, I was getting my guys back really readily. In fact, I lost only about 6 or 7 Plague Bearers from the main unit that is Talos were fighting, just because I kept getting them back and I kept minusing them to hit. So it was just one of those games, soul destroying for Martin. It's never nice when you see that kind of happen to somebody, because whatever he rolled, I was just either saving it or he was missing. He rolled so many 1s and I passed so many saves. It was absolutely, it was laughable. But it was the game that I really knew that I was up against it, and I played well, I played hard, and I took the victory to bring me in on top spot going into the final game, and head to head with my beloved Nids, which is always a tough thing to have to face, because I hate playing against Nids when they are my favourite army. So I was playing another fellow club member, Kieran, and I spoke about Kieran in the pre-show, which if you didn't watch, I did a brief show on the prior to the tournament. And so Kieran, to give you some background, Kieran is a very good player. He knows what he's doing. He's a very tactical player. He plays a lot of other systems as well. He's a very good Malifaux player, and you know, a decent 40k player. And of course he's a decent 40k player because he's made it through to the final, and I think previous tournaments he's also managed to make it quite far in the event, and I think has also just been stopped at the final hurdle. So there you go, that's a bit of background on Kieran. He doesn't play that much 40k, he doesn't play that much, and he doesn't have like a load of armies. It's pretty much Tyranids' kind of army, and he doesn't necessarily keep up to date with the latest filth. That's kind of him. To the extent that this army was painted by other people because he didn't have the time. You know, he's expecting his first kids, and you know, life gets busy. And I wouldn't necessarily class Kieran as the most competitive player in the world, but not to be underestimated. And let's be very honest, as I always am honest on these shows, as you know guys, I will always tell you warts and all. Did I underestimate this game? Possibly. Did I also underestimate my own beloved Tyranids? Definitely. And I thought that particularly, and I think, you know, I'd just come out of a game with Martin, which I thought I had no chance of winning. I had to play my absolute socks off and play my army the best it possibly could to come through with that victory. And then I'm facing off what on paper I feel I know the army inside and out. I feel I know what it does, I know what its strengths are, I know what its weaknesses are. I feel I know Tyranids better than anybody, and so I'm thinking to myself, this game should be mine. There's pretty much no way on paper that I believe that Kieran can get past me. I don't underestimate the fact that he can do damage and that he's got some good counters. So my biggest fear was the fact that Tyranids are very good at cutting down psychic powers with the Shadow and the Warp. He has a good way of pretty much neutering what I've got to throw at him. And he's got the opportunity to use stratagems to really cut out some of my key psychic powers. So I know he's got counters, but I just don't think he has the killing capacity to go through my Plague Bearers. So in my mind I'm feeling extremely confident going into the final game. I think in my mind this one is in the bag. Number one mistake. Number one mistake. That was wrong. That was big time wrong, because it doesn't matter how good your list is, it doesn't matter how well you know your opponent's list, you still need to play to game plan. You still need to play well, and you still need to not underestimate and disrespect your opponent by underestimating them. And I did that to a little bit. Now I think I made some crucial mistakes as well as underestimating and not giving the player the respect that he deserved. I picked some wrong missions. So in a nutshell, I'll go through his list quickly so you understand what I was coming up against. So he had a battalion detachment, and that was a Kraken detachment. He had 2 Broodlords, he had 3 units of Gene Stealers. The Gene Stealers were 1 unit of 15, 2 units of 14. He then had a Highfleet Kronos detachment with a Neurothrope, with 2 Neurothropes. One was his HQ, was his Warlord. And then he had an elite slot. He had 2 units of 3 Hive Guard, and then he had a unit of 3 Zoanthropes, and then he had a Leviathan detachment with 3 Hive Tyrants, all with double Devourers. So look, that's a decent list. That is a really solid list. The detachments are well played, so they're well organised to be the right kind of Hive Fleet in the right place. There's some clear things in here that are not optimised. Hive Guard should definitely all be in 1 unit to maximise the opportunity to use that stratagem. The Gene Stealers being small in numbers risks them coming away from managing to get those bonuses pretty quick. And Broodlords, even though good, running 2 is a bit of a point sink. So look, the list itself, very powerful, very capable of definitely doing damage, but not optimal. Not the most optimal Tyranid list you're going to come against, but still optimising a lot of the good units. So on paper, Kieran has not got the killing capability to chew through the Plague Bearers if I get the -2 on them. Even the -1 becomes difficult because he has very little to take away my saving throws. So having that 5 up means that, and having very little that is multiple damage apart from his Hive Guard, means that he's going to struggle to get through my main body of my army, which is then going to leave me free to smite him. And bearing in mind that my smite has the range to be able to keep out of his shadow. So if I play it smart, he has very little that can hurt me, particularly. He also doesn't have the strong threat against Magnus that other armies have got. He can't shoot Magnus off the table first turn. It's physically impossible. So I don't have to worry whether I get first turn or second turn, particularly if I deploy defensively. Now I chose old school. Now I like old school because you always want to be killing something every turn, which is why it seems to be just a good given one to go for. It fits very well with my kind of tactical play. It's always good to kill the Warlord, and Line Breaker, you want to be, I play very aggressive anyway, and I've got some quick moving units. So I tend to always go old school. In this game, I think that was a bad mistake, because I did not need to play the short game. I could very much, literally, throw the first turn at Kieran, let him come at me. He doesn't have, even with those 3 Flyrants, he doesn't have the capabilities of doing enough damage, and he has to come at me because his army is based around Gene Stealers. He has to come at me, and he has to try and take the fight to me to be able to win that game. Now, after taking that old school, I've then got the same thing. I've got to come at him. Because if I don't take something out first turn, not only will I not kill a unit in the first turn, but I also won't get my point for killing a unit in the first turn for my old school. So that's a 2-point swing that potentially I give to Kieran if I let him get away with that. So I advance everything up. I get in my long range smite, knowing that he won't be able to stop it. I then use lots of smites, lots of other psychic powers to both buff Magnus and to damage his closest unit of Gene Stealers. I obliterate them all down to 3 guys. Now they're in synapse, so they're not going to run away. If I do not kill these last 3 Gene Stealers, then I do not get my point for that killing a unit, and I do not get a point for killing a unit in the first turn. Now, the right move there is accept that. Accept that you're not going to get that, and that you probably made a mistake with taking that secondary objective. Instead, what I do is I go after those points. So I then warp time Magnus, I jump him over my protection, and I charge him directly into the Gene Stealers to kill them off, which I do. So I get my 2 points. That's great, that's in the bag. But then I've just given him Magnus, because I'm now allowing 2 units of 15-man Gene Stealers, as well as all his other attacking units, to then focus down Magnus and kill him off. And that's what happened. Now, I still didn't give it as a definite, but then Kieran got extremely lucky. So he lucked out. His Zoanthropes rolled a double 6, peril in, but then rolled another 6 for damage, taking 6 wounds off Magnus in the first turn, which ultimately then allowed the Gene Stealers to be able to finish him off. Without that, because he even needed to attack twice to kill him, even with 2 Broodlords and 2 units of Gene Stealers. In fact, 1 unit of Gene Stealers didn't make it in, but still, yeah. So he wouldn't, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to do it. But he got that 6 mortal wounds from the Zoanthrope, which pretty much killed off Magnus. And then he was at me. He was literally at my door, and I then needed such a hot turn, which is something that I didn't need. If I just gave him first turn, or just literally came up on him slowly and allowed him to try and attack me and then countered him, I wouldn't have had that problem. But instead, I wasn't in that position, so I now needed a really hot turn 2. And my turn 2 did not turn out hot. He denied the right psychic powers. He managed to keep all of his Flyrants alive, so I decided basically at that point his Gene Stealers are still were dangerous, but I wasn't as worried about them as the Flyrants, who now I knew I had very little opportunity to deal with them particularly, so I needed to kill them with smites before they just had the free run of the board. So I directed smites into 2 of them. I didn't kill them off. In fact, I didn't kill very many wounds because he managed to deny some key psychic powers. And that pretty much was all they wrote, because then Kieran had the momentum. He then was able to really start to wreck face in my lines. His Gene Stealers were chewing through Plague Bearers and getting through them slowly but surely. I wasn't getting my key rolls for morale. He then got into my lines, and it was just a spiralling downhill after that. I just didn't start the game well enough, and my turn 2 I did not roll hot enough. So Kieran took it, and look, absolutely full credit to Kieran. He played it perfectly. I gave him the opportunity, and he absolutely took it with 2 hands, and he ripped my head off, which was basically the right thing to do. He took that opportunity and he grasped it and he made it count, which is what you have to do. Going into that game, I don't think Kieran would have given himself a particularly big chance of taking that. But what he did do was, once I gave him a glimmer of hope and I gave him a chink in my armour, he absolutely took it and rolled with it, and well done to him. A fully well-deserved win, which gave him the title. And as what always happens in the final, when you lose in the final, you get relegated. And I was relegated to 4th place. And that's where it comes back to the slight frustration around missing my game 3. Because if I had got 30 points from my game 3, that would have put me in 3rd place. And I would have then, taken that 3rd place, which would have been a little bit nicer than the 4th. But there you go. So well done to Kieran for taking the title. Well done for Martin, who managed to take that 2nd place. And well done to Alex, who snuck in with that 3rd place. So well done to you guys. Well done to everybody else. It was an awesome tournament. I did manage to take Best Painted Miniature for my Iron Man. Really, really happy with that. Really pleasing to get to come out of a little prize. And of all things, which was really quite funny, my prize I won for Best Painted Miniature was the very cool Tyrannid Get Started box with Gene Stealers and a Broodlord that had just screwed me over. So very fitting, but very funny. So all in all, an incredible event. One of the most fun 2 days of 40k I played for a long time. Great bunch of players, great atmosphere, awesome tables. Just can't thank the guys enough. Really, really well done, and I will definitely be looking forward to returning next year. So if you like what you hear and you like what you've seen, then definitely check it out. Get that in your calendar for next year. Start following the page. Check it out. Keep an eye out for WarZone Mann 2019. And hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you're still watching, thank you so much. Thank you to my patrons. I love you so much. You are amazing. Thank everybody else for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.